So we're about to dive into a recently leaked document that sent absolute shockwaves through intelligence communities all over the world. And just to be clear, this isn't some kind of theoretical what-if scenario. Nope, this is an inside look at a highly detailed, very, very real war plan. One designed to do the unthinkable and, in the process, completely change the rules of modern naval warfare. Okay, picture this. It's February 3rd, 2026. At 2:22 in the morning, a single document starts making the rounds online. Within just a few hours, it would have every single senior U.S. military officer on high alert, kicking off a major crisis as they began to grasp the sheer scale of what Iran had been planning in secret. And this is what they found. A 47-page document, all in Farsi, stamped with the insignia of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. And its title, Operation Martyr's Vengeance. This was no academic study. It was a step-by-step, fully actionable plan to find and sink an American aircraft carrier. So that begs the question, right? Why would they even create a plan this audacious? Well, the document makes it crystal clear. This was designed to be a preemptive first strike. The idea was to launch it the second a conflict with the U.S. looked like it was about to happen. And it had very specific goals, all aimed at completely shifting the balance of power in the Middle East. It really boiled down to three main objectives. First, take out America's #1 tool for projecting power in the region, the aircraft carrier. Second, inflict such massive casualties that the American public would demand an immediate withdrawal from the conflict. And third, and this one might be the most important, to completely shatter the myth of American invincibility. This was a plan aimed just as much at psychology as it was at steel. All right, now let's get into the operational details, and this is where the plan gets chillingly precise. See, it wasn't about getting one lucky shot. No, this was about pure, overwhelming force. A strategy of saturation designed to make any kind of defense mathematically impossible to pull off. At the heart of the attack was this, a single, perfectly coordinated first wave of somewhere between 200 and 240 ballistic missiles. The plan called for launching all of them from at least 12 different sites all across Iran and all within a 90-second window. The goal was simple, just overwhelm the carrier group's defenses before they even knew what hit them. And this wasn't just, throwing missiles in the air and hoping for the best. Oh no. Each type of missile had a very specific job. The bulk of them, the Shahab 3s, were there for one reason, to saturate the air with so many threats the defenders couldn't track them all. Then you have these Schedule 2 missiles for rapid strikes, just to make the defensive problem even more chaotic. But here's the critical part. Some precision missiles were tasked with taking out the carrier's escort ships first, essentially blinding the carrier. And only then, after the defenses were worn down, would the Fatah 2 hypersonic missiles deliver the final blow. And the countdown itself was just meticulous. 15 minutes out, a final satellite check confirms the carrier's exact location. 10 minutes out, all missile systems report ready. 5 minutes, the final coordinates are locked in. 2 minutes, final authorization is confirmed. And then a 90-second window opens and over 200 missiles begin to lift off, creating what's essentially an unstoppable wave of destruction. And this brings us to the raw, brutal math of the attack. Look, American naval defenses are the best on the planet, but even they have their limits. Iran's plan was specifically designed to find those limits and just blow right past them. It's a brutal numbers game. Let's just look at the numbers, head to head. On one side, you have Iran's salvo of over 200 ballistic missiles. On the other, a typical carrier strike group has maybe 3 to 5 ships with the Aegis defense system. Now, in a perfect world, if every single missile tube on those ships was loaded with an interceptor, which, by the way, it never is, they'd have a maximum theoretical capacity of around 300 to 480 interceptors. Iran's plan was devastatingly simple. Launch more missiles than the strike group could physically shoot down. So you might be looking at those numbers and thinking, okay, but the US still has more interceptors, right? So the carrier's safe? Well, it's not that simple. Not even close. Real combat is messy. Not every interceptor hits its target, and the sheer chaos of that many incoming threats all at once creates a whole new level of problem. Plus, Iran wasn't necessarily aiming to sink the carrier outright. They were aiming for something else entirely. And this is the key concept: a mission kill. You see, you don't actually have to sink the carrier. All you have to do is damage its flight deck or its command centers or its aircraft so badly that it can't launch or recover planes anymore.
If a carrier can't do its main job, it's effectively been taken off the chessboard. And for Iran, that's a huge strategic victory.
Just think about the math for a second. Let's say U.S. defenses have an almost unbelievably successful day and achieve a 90% intercept rate. That's incredible, but it would still mean that 20 warheads get through. 20 ballistic missiles hitting a group of ships sailing close together. A single warhead hitting a flight deck is a catastrophe. 20? Well, that's just unimaginable.
And this was the chilling conclusion from the intelligence analysts who pored over this plan. They determined that if Iran executed it just as it was written, the probability of achieving a mission kill on that carrier was greater than 70%. This wasn't some fantasy. It was a plausible, credible, and frankly, a terrifyingly effective plan. So, as you can imagine, the moment this intelligence was confirmed, it triggered an immediate, high-level crisis inside the U.S. government. The response was incredibly fast, which just goes to show you how seriously they took this threat. This timeline really shows you the escalation. The documents discovered just after 2 a.m. By 6:30 in the morning, the president is being briefed. By 9 a.m., the National Security Council is meeting in an emergency session. And by that afternoon, the crew of the carrier that was the most likely target, the USS Abraham Lincoln, is being told that an adversary has a detailed plan to destroy their ship. I mean, can you imagine being a sailor and hearing that news? The U.S. took 3 immediate actions. First, all carriers in the area were put on a much higher state of defensive readiness. Second, intelligence assets were immediately refocused to watch Iran's missile sites like a hawk. They needed to know within hours, not days, if a mobilization was starting. And third, a very clear message was sent to Iran through back channels that basically said, "We know what you're planning, and executing this plan would be suicide." So the immediate crisis did eventually de-escalate, but the strategic landscape was changed forever. The plan's very existence kicked off a new era and forced the Pentagon to start asking some very, very uncomfortable questions. Suddenly, these huge, fundamental assumptions were all on the table. Is it just too risky anymore to operate a 100,000-ton warship with 5,000 people on board in the tight, confined waters of the Persian Gulf? Does the military need to shift away from these massive, high-value targets and move to a more spread-out force? And when we talk to other countries, is the threat of a massive conventional missile strike now an even bigger priority than nuclear weapons? Ultimately, what it all boils down to is this. For decades, the U.S. aircraft carrier was the ultimate symbol of untouchable American power. This plan proved that that is just no longer the case. A determined adversary with enough missiles can now hold these incredibly valuable assets at risk. And that leaves us with this final, really powerful thought. Operation Martyr's Vengeance was never launched. But by forcing the United States to change its operations, its strategy, and its military spending, the plan has already achieved a huge part of its mission, without a single missile ever leaving the ground. And it raises a profound question for the future of warfare. How do you defend against a threat that wins by simply existing?